In this video, we will be reacting to everyday European things that the American brain simply can't comprehend. I'm an American who's been traveling the world and living abroad for nearly 2 years, and in that time, I've come to realize that Europe provides an unequivocally higher quality of life than the USA. And if you don't believe me, believe them. Okay, so we have a lot to unpack here. For starters, free education. So, free education is something that Americans, for the most part, simply can't conceptualize, especially Americans from my generation, because the notion that people can go to college and get a higher education without going into 5 or even 6-figure debt is unbelievable for most of us. Because it's not possible, it's not feasible for your average middle-class American. Sure, if you're a valedictorian, meaning you're at the top of your graduating class in terms of your grades and you did all of the extracurriculars and you're just that gifted, you can go to college for free. They have scholarships for people like that. The problem is, most people are not like that. By the very nature of the label, not everyone can be valedictorian. Not everyone can be top 10%. There has to be a bottom 90% within a graduating class. Should those people not have the same access to college as the people who are in that top 10%? I guess every country sees the answer to that question a little bit differently. And I'm more inclined to agree with the European model, in which people, regardless of where they fall on that scale, have access to higher education. It's fascinating because the US is supposed to be the land of opportunity, and yet so many Americans don't have the opportunity to break out of their economic class, or should I say economic caste, because for a lot of Americans, they're just pretty much doomed. I mean, there are so many people in the US who are either definitely qualified intellectually to go to university, but choose not to because of the student loan situation, or people who choose to go to college in spite of the loan situation and then come out with 6-figure student loan debt and no job prospects. And I'm laughing, but really nothing's funny about it. Nothing is really funny about the fact that there are people coming out of college with all of this student loan debt, which, by the way, you can't get rid of, and you can't expatriate from the USA if you owe the government money. And these loans are coming from the government. So they are keeping people trapped in the USA. And I'm so grateful that I identified this early on in my life. Because so many Americans, they go to college because it's what they're told to do. It's what they're told is the most viable path to the American dream. And for some people it is, but for most people it's not. And what ends up happening is they're paying off student loans until they're in their 40s. And I mean, you can talk about how the pay in the US is higher and the taxes are lower, but if you take into account the fact that to get that higher pay, you have to pay so much in student loans, plus the student loan interest, I mean, you're probably breaking even and you have a lower quality of life, especially when you consider the fact that Europeans have much better access to healthcare. Now, one of the most fascinating counter arguments I hear about healthcare, and universal healthcare specifically, in Europe is that, well, you're paying for it out of your check. And yeah, that's true. You are paying for it out of your check. So it's not free, but it is more accessible for the common person, meaning that you're not just going to see people in 5 or 6-figure medical debt. In fact, I recall reading a statistic. I could be wrong about this. Correct me if I'm wrong about this in the comments. Verify this for yourself. But I recall reading a statistic that said that most bankruptcies in the US occur because of medical loans. Again, you can verify this for yourself. I could be wrong, but that's just what I have read. And if that's the case, that's not indicative of a very efficient system. Maybe there's a more efficient way of doing things, and maybe other countries are already adopting those more efficient ways of doing things, and the US can actually learn from that. Now, this person right here in the comments said, Free healthcare sounds nice until you have to wait 6 months to get into a doctor's office. And that's another counter argument that I hear quite frequently in regards to universal healthcare. But what if that was actually not a bad thing? Now, for starters, I'm not even saying that that's actually the case in every country that has universal healthcare, because I'm willing to bet that it's not. Maybe in some countries it is, but definitely not in every country. But even if that was the case, what that really tells me is that more people have access to healthcare and they are utilizing that access accordingly. In other words, there is a much higher demand for healthcare because people can actually afford to use it.
What's just permanently in my brain at all times is that I don't think citizens of the EU know just how lucky they are. And yes, I'm saying citizens of the EU and not Europeans because I want you all to know I'm being so serious right now, and this is not a joke, it's for real. Like, if you're someone who lives in the EU, I don't think you fully can comprehend like just how lucky and privileged and blessed you are to have all the things that you have. Here's why. Number one, you get to live in the most beautiful places. I know it's really hard to take a step back and like appreciate where you are or what you have when you're living in it. It's the only thing you know. But trust me, you are so lucky to live in these such beautiful cities. I'm living in Germany right now, and it's the only place I've ever lived within Europe. So it's the only country I can really like speak on in terms of living quality and things. But within Germany, I've lived in 7 different cities. Okay, so I really do feel like I have like a full picture, or close to a full picture, okay, of the country as a whole when it comes to living. And let me tell you, without fail, I see the same reactions from people no matter where I live. It's like no matter what city I'm living in, people always will find things to complain about when it comes to living in said city. I was just living close to Munich for the last few years, and everyone was always like, oh, I hate Munich so much. There's too many people. It's too busy. I've also lived like in a small fishing kind of like vacation spot on the ocean all the way up north. It was so beautiful. And guess what? People still complain, being like, oh, there's not much to do here. It's so boring. Like, hello, you're on the ocean. People go there to go on vacation. Like, relax. And trust me, I fully know that like complaining is just part of German culture. It's really just embedded into your DNA, but it makes me so frustrated. I just want to squeeze you and be like, you don't understand just how lucky you are to live here. I don't care that the city's small. I don't care that there's nothing to do. Look around. It's beautiful. Okay, number 2, you have the ability to travel like to any other country in Europe at the drop of a hat. I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you can get to any country in less than 2 hours on a plane. You can just wake up one morning and be like, hey, I have 2 days off from work. Let's go to London for the fun of it. This was something that shocked me in such a good way when we first moved to Germany. Because my husband's in football, sometimes we'll randomly get like 2 or 3 days off. And all of his teammates would be like, hey, where are you going? I'm going to Rome. I'm going to London. I'm going here, there. I'm going to Paris. And it was just like, what? You're just like going there like for a weekend getaway? And the answer is yes. And people do this. And it's so amazing. Do you know how lucky you are to be surrounded by all these amazing countries and different cultures and everything? Like, people back home in the US where I'm from spend their entire life dreaming about taking a trip to Europe. They're saving for years. It's on their bucket list. Like, before I die, I have to go to Europe. I have to see these seas. Like this is something that is so unattainable and so unreachable for some people. But here, you can just like do it on a weekend like it's nothing. Number 3, you also have the ability to just pick up and move to any other country within the EU without getting a different visa. Do you realize like just how awesome that is? Other people around the world would love to have the opportunity to just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna go live in this other country. Do I need a visa? No, because it's all in the EU. Like, amazing. Number 4, you have socialized medicine. Okay, government funded healthcare. I don't need to say too much about this because I feel like I've made enough videos on this. But take this from a girl who grew up in the United States of America, okay? Ask anyone over there how they're feeling about healthcare, and they're gonna look at your situation and say, wow, you guys are so lucky, because people in America do have health insurance. They pay tens of thousands of dollars for their family's health insurance every year. And guess what? You can still go bankrupt from getting in a car accident and needing some life-saving operation. It's madness. Number 5, you have really good quality food. This is such a hot topic back in the United States right now because there are so many ingredients that are banned in Europe that are not banned in America. Things that are really dangerous, cancer-causing, etc., etc. So you are so lucky to not have that issue to always have to think about.
Okay, so she raised some very, very good points throughout this video. And one thing that I want to point out, we already touched on healthcare, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But she mentioned that the food quality is higher. And this comment right here maybe explains it even better than I can. The reason so many food additives are banned is because the government funded healthcare. If we don't get sick, it's cheaper for the administration. Exactly. When the government is the one footing the bill, when the government is subsidizing the health of its people, it is in the government's best interest to ensure that the food quality standards are as high as they can possibly be. So that's a direct consequence of the government subsidized healthcare. So it's a domino effect. And that's the cool thing when thinking about how the US can maybe fix some of its problems, is that sure, it's going to be an arduous process, especially given how large of a country the US is, but a lot of these issues sort of rely on one another. So you add in the government subsidized healthcare, all of a sudden the food quality goes up. All of a sudden they start building more dense urban environments that are walkable and bikeable, which are not only cheaper in terms of actually building and sustaining those environments in and of themselves, but also because people are walking, cycling, and just moving more in general, now you see a compounding effect on their health because everyone's living a healthier lifestyle overall. And of course, that is going to pay dividends, especially as they get older. Now, Europeans have all of this already, and they do love to complain. And this is one of the most fascinating things that I experienced in the Netherlands as well, because when I would hear people complain about different things in the Netherlands, oh, the train isn't on time, or this and that, I was like, you don't realize how good you have it. Crime is going up in Amsterdam. I don't even know if that's actually true or not. Or, oh, this city is dangerous. I'm like, no, not really. It's not really dangerous at all. If you can walk there at nighttime, it's not dangerous. But of course, everything is relative, and I learned that over time. And as my girlfriend has traveled with me to not only the US, but also here to Southeast Asia, she's gotten a chance to see what danger and chaos can actually look like in real time. The Netherlands, for example, literally has nothing even remotely similar to some of the dangerous neighborhoods I took her to in the US. There's literally no comparison. In terms of chaos, a place like Hanoi, Vietnam, where we are right now, or Pattaya, Thailand, where we were previously, the level of chaos there is completely unfathomable for a Dutch person who has never left the Netherlands, which I found was exceedingly rare. In fact, I don't think I met a single Dutch person who didn't leave the Netherlands at least once in their lives because, to the girl's point, cheap international travel. Not only are these places closer to each other, where a 6-hour drive can take you from Amsterdam to Paris, but if you want to fly, it's cheaper. It's so much cheaper to travel from place to place. I think when my girlfriend moved to Valencia for her internship back in 2023, she paid something like 90 euros for the flight. And that just blew me away. That blew me away because I feel like even domestic flights in the US are more expensive than international flights in Europe, even if you're covering the same distance, which is probably why so few Americans are very well traveled, is because it's just so expensive. And when you already have the student loan debt and or medical debt, it's just not feasible, let alone if you decide to have kids.
There's 3 things that really shocked me coming to England as an American from the South for the first time. First one was a really big shock, and it's no air conditioning. Unless you're in, a supermarket or a pretty big facility like a theater or anything like that. But I tell you what, I about nearly died the first time I came and didn't have no AC. Second one would have to be the curry dish. I wasn't really fond of Indian food at all until I came here. You guys definitely changed my mind on this. I didn't realize how common it was to have a curry dish until I went to a wedding, and that's what they served at the reception. So, hey, big ups to you guys. Y'all know how to do a good curry. Number 3 would have to be you guys are not really in a rush to say hello to strangers. I found this one a bit difficult because in the South, we literally say hello to everybody. Don't matter if you know them or not. I'm still kind of working on this one because it's like instinct to say, hey, what's up? Hope you're doing all right. But I do know that if you were to try to make eye contact with somebody on the tube, you would probably give them emotional trauma. So I'm pulling that one back a little bit.
The air conditioning thing. That took me by surprise as well, being in the Netherlands, particularly in the summer, where it didn't really get that hot, but when you're inside, it always feels hotter than it is outside, which is why you just go outside. On those sunny days where it was hot and miserable indoors, it was amazing to be outside, especially when the sun was out and you just got to experience that blue sky after weeks on end of cloudy weather. Really came to enjoy that, and I realized that air conditioning for a place like that with that kind of climate would be largely unnecessary. Now, for a place like Spain, Italy, so on and so forth, I would most certainly have air conditioning. Anywhere where it gets warm like that, and that is the default climate, I'm gonna have air conditioning personally. But Northern, Western Europe, I just don't see the point. As far as curry goes and Indian food overall, I have not had the privilege of having Indian food in the UK, although I wish I had tried that when we were there for the day and a half that we were there. But I assume that Indian food is to the UK what Mexican food is to the US. I could be completely wrong about that. Let me know in the comments if I am, if you've had both of them. But I have heard nothing but great things about Indian food in the UK. So it's definitely on my list of things to try next time we go, because I did have some kind of curry when we were in Pattaya, Thailand, and that was pretty good. As far as being closed off, I actually see that as a plus. Now, forgive me if I come across as some sort of cranky, irritable recluse, but that's kind of what I am in all actuality. I am a very big recluse and I just like to keep to myself. But I can see how if you come from the South specifically, which is also where I come from, it would be a major culture shock. But I actually believe this has less to do with being in Europe compared to the US than it does being in a denser environment compared to a more sprawling environment. The US, even within some of the larger cities like Dallas, where I'm from, tends to be very sprawling. And because it's sprawling, people just don't see each other that much because they don't go outside because they're always in their cars. And so when they finally see each other, when they finally see other humans, they crave that human interaction. Whereas in a place like the Netherlands, even in the suburbs, everything is very dense. Even in the countryside, the towns, the villages tend to be very dense, and as a result, people do not feel deprived of human interaction like they do in the USA.